Okay, let's make a brisket today. Brisket is a cut of beef. There's two pieces usually that come with it. One's a fattier piece. You can see the marbling in here. That's called the decal. Then there's the first cut, which is the piece that's usually fairly dry. You can see the different line in here. You can separate it. They make a corned beef, they make it out of this. They trim it up a little bit. We're going to leave it whole like this, cook it up. See if we can't get a nice roast out of it. It's kind of like a pot roast. It's a little tough. It's got to be cooked low and slow. Low and slow. You do it high at first to get a good sear going in the meat. But then you bring it down a little bit so it doesn't get dried out. So we're going to salt it. Let me get some pepper on here. I'm going to flip this guy over. A little bit more salt. A little bit more pepper. Now I got my oven at 425 right now. And the reason why is we're going to go real high. Usually about an hour a pound for this, for brisket. Works good. So at 425 to start with. We'll go for about 45 minutes and then we'll turn it down to 350 and let it finish off the rest of the time with that. So I got my pan over here started. It's pretty hot right now. I'm going to get some oil in this thing. We're going to sear it, searing in all these juices. You probably got about about 2 tablespoons of oil in there. Let me get you over here. Okay, we got the little one today, so she'll be interrupting us occasionally. So we're going to sear it first. The flat side down first. You know what? Let's sear the decal side down first because that's going to be on top. About a medium heat. I'm going to pull this off to the side a little bit. We're going to get a good sear on that, so that'll take a good 3 to 4 minutes. Meanwhile, let's get some veggies going. Two carrots. You don't have to peel these. We're not going to be eating them. Just going to make a wonderful sauce. And about 2 onions. Not about, I got 2 onions. Again, you don't have to peel these. And then probably 2 celeries. 2 will probably work. You go rinse them off real fast. see what we got. Got a good sear going over here, huh? Flip that guy over. Give that about 2 or 3 minutes on this side. Add some garlic. I got 3 big cloves here. That root's no good. You're not going to be able to use that for anything. And I've got 1 small can of tomato paste here. I'm not going to use the whole thing. We're going to use about half of it. Then we got some Worcestershire sauce, bay leaves, and thyme. I like these little packets. They cost 50 cents. If you don't use the whole thing up in a while and throw it out, you're not losing a whole lot. Alright, I got my oven preheating. It's searing up nicely. Let's catch that big fat side there. My stove's about medium high. We don't want to burn anything up, you know. Alright, we're going to take our vegetable mixture, get this in the pan. Only because we need that plate. Alright, looks good. We got a good sear started on there. That's going to steal in all the juices. And let's give these just a second to cook here. We'll throw in our half a can of tomato paste. Okay, I'm going to put about a teaspoon of thyme in here. Probably 1, 2, 3, 4 bay leaves. 5 bay leaves. About a teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce, maybe a tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. And about a cup of water right now, just to deglaze everything. Deglazing is going to get all that juice, all that dried up bits. That's called fond. That's stuck to the bottom of the pan there. Got to get it all up. Okay, that's what we got here. So we had plenty of salt on that meat. And I'm going to throw in some whole black peppercorns that I use for my pepper mill. Probably like 10, 12, 15. I don't want to make it too spicy. Hello, baby. I know, I hear you. I'll be right there. And I'll be back in 2 seconds. Okay, we're back for a minute. So this has been boiling for about 5 minutes or so. The veggies are starting to get soft. Make sure everything's all kind of separated in there. Just going to make a nice sauce for us in a little while. So let's get our beef on top of here and get it situated inside of there like that. So braising is basically covering it about halfway and letting it roast off. So we're going to get in and see how much water this is going to take. Our oven is almost preheated, 450. Let's see here. We don't want to wash off all that goodness that we seared into the meat. Okay, so what we're going to do now is let this cool just for a second so I can handle it. I'm going to get that in the oven. The oven is preheated to 450. Seal it up pretty tight. We don't have to cool it. I had to cool it already. I had to take a baby break. Okay, all of our spices are in there. Vegetables are in there. Everything's all cooked down a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in the oven. And then we'll bring it out in about 4 hours and see what we end up with. So this is going to go about 1 hour at the 450. Then we're going to reduce it down to 350 for 3 more hours. So it's 10 o'clock right now. We'll be back around 1. Okay, we're back and it's been 4 hours. So let's see what we got. I did put a little piece of paper underneath the foil because it was starting to get a little tarnished, and that'll transfer out onto your meat. Alright, sorry for the steam there. So there's our brisket. Let's see what we got. That guy's pretty darn tender. Right now it'll just fall apart if you try to touch it. So we definitely got to let it sit. That thing's fork tender. Right now it's sitting at 210, 211, so 212, so that's boiling. So this is you can see I'm just sticking in here with 0 resistance. It's not going to be dry. Brisket has a tendency to get dry, but since we put that decal on the top, that decal transferred all the fat down and it drizzled down on top of everything. So let's grab a spatula here and get up underneath this guy. So right now it'll just fall apart if you try to do anything to it, so just be careful with it. And we're going to take this out of the pan and transfer it over to our sauteed pan over here just to hold it. That's all we're going to do right now. I'm going to put this off to the side. Alright, now what we got is we got some goodness in here. Look at this guy, huh? This is all those vegetables been cooking. You can definitely eat those. I mean, there's nothing wrong with them. So all those veggies are cooked. ton of fat in here. We don't want anything to do with that fat, so we're gonna grab this guy. They've been around forever. But to speed things up a little bit, we're gonna pour it through a strainer and then transfer it to that thing. One dirty extra pan, but I think it'd be a little easier. That tomato paste that was in there gave that nice flavor. The bay leaves gave it some nice flavor. And here's our pan there. This was stainless, so the stainless pans are pretty nice. That's a big sucker. All right, I don't think I'm gonna trash these. I'm thinking I'm gonna eat them. So let me move these out of the way. Now we can put it in this thing. The way these things work, it's this hollow tube. The opening is not till you get down to the bottom, way down inside of here. So what you're going to end up is all the fat's going to go to the top, and all the oil's going to, all the liquids be at the bottom. And what we're going to have here is about a quart of the best sauce you're going to get. Okay, so we're going to let this set, let the fat settle to the top for a few minutes. And I went ahead and I cut up about 4 potatoes. I peeled them. I usually don't peel them, but cut them up. You don't have to cut squares, chunks, anything you want. Just try to keep them uniform so the skinny ones don't cook super fast and just turn into crap on you. And then the thicker ones are going to be still hard. So we're going to let this separate a little while. We're going to let that meat cool down. I've got a bag of those frozen veggies. You know I'm all about the frozen veggies. We're going to saute them up in a little while. And we're going to make up a roux, and we're going to make up this gravy that's inside of here. That smells so good. Alright, we'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, now we're back. This is the meat's been cooled a little bit. First thing I want to do is get these potatoes on. I got 3 or 4 potatoes I cleaned up. They're about a 1/4 inch thick, a little thicker. Just make sure they're uniform size so one doesn't cook and the other one's still hard, all right? I'm gonna put that on the stove behind me. All right, what I got inside of here is about 2 tablespoons of butter. We got about a quart of sauce we're gonna make of that broth. So we want to, we're gonna have 1 tablespoon per cup, right? So 2 tablespoons of butter should be plenty. And then we'll put 2 tablespoons of flour in that. So that'll give us a total of 4 tablespoons, right? And so we're gonna make a roux to start with. We'll mix these 2 together. If it looks a little fatty, it may need a little more flour in there. And that's a good thing about roux. It doesn't really go bad on you. All right, so this should be perfect there. So you want to let this cook until it browns up. You want to brown it up. It gets a little bit strengthening power when it starts to brown. You want to do it low and slow. This is one of those things you don't want to rush it. Right, we're going to let that cook real slow there. Now, our broth is over here nice. Looks like we got about a 1/4 inch of fat on the top. It's a little bit in that tube too, so we're going to go ahead and pour that off, just that little bit in the tube, and then this will drain out of the bottom so the fat stays on the top. Let me just go dump that out of there just a little, real quick. All right, there it is. All right. We don't want a super thick gravy. And we may need to put a little salt and pepper in here to correct the flavor. We'll see. This is starting to brown up nicely. As I was saying, the browner the flour, the more thickening power it has, until it gets to the point to where it's kind of bitter. When they make the roux to make like for a gumbo and stuff, they let that cook for an hour, hours at a time, really, really low and slow, and it just kind of gives it a deep, deep, dark, rich color. So this is, looks like we got about 3 or 4 tablespoons in there, right? So it looks like I may have a little more than a quart of sauce. So I'm going to grab a little more flour to put in here. All right. Oh, I like that. That's going to be better. Now the broth is already seasoned. That's already got the bay leaf in there. It's already got the thyme in there. Potatoes are behind us, cooking nicely. Starting to come to a boil. Now those, you can salt them now or salt them later. I prefer to salt them later because you'll be seasoning everything at the same time. Alright, you can see this flour is starting to brown up a little bit. This is roux, R-O-U-X. Make sure you keep it moving, keep it off the sides. Okay, now if you were to dump this pre-cooked roux into another pot if you're making it on the side, be careful because it'll skip right off the top because it'll just deflect off that heat. When you're doing this, be careful. You're going to pour into here because it's going to boil up real fast and it'll clump. So you want to just go ahead and get it in there, but be careful it doesn't boil over. Alright, that looks nice and it's getting a nice color. It starts to get a nice nutty flavor. Just another second longer on that. Oh, that's perfect right there. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and pour. Keep it moving. Get that stirred in there. Okay. Now you can add the rest of your broth. Don't mix this thing around too much because you don't want to upset that oil that's on the top. Now the longer this cooks, the thicker it's going to get. And you want to keep this moving at the start because you don't want to get clumps in here. Make sure you're scraping around those edges and the corners of the pan. It's a round pan, they have corners. Okay. May look a little thin now, but once that roux starts doing its thing, you make a nice gravy. Another couple ounces. I don't want to get into that fat. All right, there we go. That looks pretty good. Now we got nothing left in here but a couple ounces of fat and maybe an ounce or two of the broth. We'll see if we need that. I'm going to turn these potatoes down. No need to keep them over there ripping at a full boil. You just cook the water out that way. All right, let's give this a taste and see what we ended up with. Got good flavor. I think it needs a little pinch of salt. If you had a beef bouillon cube, if you wanted to put in there, that'd be fine. A little more pepper. Now you can see this is starting to thicken up a little bit. Now as this boils, it'll definitely thicken up. Unlike cornstarch, once it boils, it's done. Roux keeps thickening as it boils. And it'll reduce down some too. And we want this to be about thick enough to coat the back of the spoon. Any thicker than that, it starts getting a little pasty. Any thinner than that, it's just going to be watery. All right, let me grab a new spoon. Let's try this one. See how it's starting to thicken up nicely, huh? Just another pinch of salt. All right, that's beautiful. So we're going to let this cook down and reduce for about 5 minutes or so. Let me turn down the heat. You never want to go over medium. Potatoes are going to be about 10 more minutes on that. Let's look at this guy. Pull this off to the side. Grab our cutting board. So this is cooled. If you cut a hot piece of meat, let me tell you what happens. The blood in there is alive. So what it's going to do, it's going to run to the coolest part. So when you cut a piece of meat down the middle while it's still hot, all the blood runs away. And so it just drains all out. Once you let it sit for a second, they call it standing. Once you let it stand, it has a chance to the blood to get back into the hot parts of the meat and get settled where it needs to be. So now you can cut it and it's not going to run out all over the place. So if you look at this, these grains are running long ways that are in here. You don't want to cut it this way with the grain because you're going to end up these big long chunks, right? So there's a couple ways to do this. So in the club, we always trim this out. So you go right down this line here. All right? You see what I'm doing here? You go right down that fat line. Okay, and what you're going to get is fat on one side, fat on the other side, and then you'll have that piece of meat that's in here, and then you get all that fat that's in the center. You definitely don't have to do this part. You can give that a quick sharpening. So now you can get some of this excess fat off of here. And we always did that. We always took that decal off the top. And that gave us a nice cleaner piece. And you don't want to be eating that crap anyway. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that at all. So that's the first cut. That's the lean part. Like if you get a corned beef, that's the lean part on here. Now this one's the same thing. You'll really be hard pressed trying to get all that fat out of there. You want to trim it up a little bit. Right, that's nice and cleaned up. Okay, let's see what we got. This is also, the grain is also running this way in this. So you don't want to cut this way. So you want to cut across it. You can see the grain running. So when you cut, you want to cut down into it. Okay. And this is just like any pot roast the way we cook this.
It didn't matter because somebody did turkey very well, that's why. Okay.
Look at that, isn't that nice?
Okay.
Nice and tender. It's not overcooked. No, this one as well. It grains this way.
Okay.
Just kind of cut it at a bias on there. You don't have to go straight across. You can cut it at a bias like this. We would refrigerate these and cut them on the slicer. So we're going to end up with here.
Okay. Now it's got poop all over her.
You can see these nice cuts. It's not going to be stringy at all. Nice little pot roast. This stuff is wonderful. Alright, so our gravy is over here. We can see it. Let me push it over if I hear it can. Gravy's starting to thicken up nicely. Look at that. Okay, that's going to be another 2 or 3 or 5 minutes. You shouldn't have any clumps. If you do, you could pour it through a filter. Strain it out. Not necessary. Let me get a fork and test out these potatoes. Alright, potatoes got about another 3 or 4 more minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and cut up this pot roast the rest of the way. And get this reduced down. We'll be back in about 5 minutes max. Okay, we're back. So this is reduced down nicely. You can see it came down about a ½ inch. It's thickened up very nice. Let's give it a quick stir. Let's see what we got. That's nice, huh? So what I was saying, you want it to coat the back of a spoon. So you dip your spoon down in there and pick it up and look at it. Nice coat on the back of it. Run your finger through there. You can see how that coat that spoon perfectly, okay? A lot thicker than that, it would kind of make it pasty. And things aren't going to be boiling when you serve them, right? So they tend to get thick fast once they cool down. So that's about perfect. Nice and runny. Not runny. Nice liquidy. All right. That's got excellent flavor. You can taste all the carrots and the onions and the celery, the garlic, the thyme, a bay leaf in there. That tomato paste gives a little bit of the sweetness. So let's get this fire rolling here. I'm going to throw this guy on here real fast. I'm going to pull this off to the side. Okay, our potatoes. Potatoes are done. Falls right off the fork. You don't want to cook them to death because then they just get too watery. We'd take these and we'd drain them out and let them sit for a few minutes. As they're draining, they let some of that water come out of them. So I'm just going to pull that off to the side real fast and let that drain. The steam will come out of it. Okay. Let's grab just about a tablespoon and a half of butter. Maybe 2 tablespoons of butter. Believe me, those potatoes are going to hold some heat for a minute, so you really don't have to worry about that. But we want these green beans to be nice and buttery. These petite whole beans, I love them. They call them in French haricots verts. H-A-R-I-C-O-T V-E-R-T-E. Vert for green. Haricot is a bean. Alright. If you had some almond slices, you slivered almonds, you put those inside of there, the thin sliced ones, and saute them up first until they start to get a little nutty flavor. And then add your beans to that. Green beans, almond bean. That's excellent. Okay, that's nice and hot. This says that it's 4 servings per container. Get it all in there, huh? I'm gonna get some black pepper in there. Salt. You season it the way you want to season it. Give that a quick toss. Look down inside of there. You may have a couple beans that have that tail on them. It's not going to hurt anything, but okay, let's pull this off to the side. Our potatoes drained out nicely. Steamed out a little bit. We have no potatoes and no salt in there, so this is at least a teaspoon The salt. I'm going to get another teaspoon in there. My dish ran empty. Give those beans a toss over here. Okay, into our hot potatoes. Chicken broth is very good to use instead of water. Into our hot potatoes, we're going to put about another tablespoon of butter, maybe 2. Half and half is good in here. Heavy cream is good in here. Yeah, probably just about a 1/4 cup of milk in there. Let's give these guys a mush. People have a tendency to make these too thick when they use the instant, and they get real pasty. But once you whip them up a little bit, these aren't instant, obviously. You don't want to put too much liquid in these to start with, because you don't know how much is left in those potatoes. You can always add a little more milk, a little more butter, salt. And don't forget, butter is a liquid when it melts, so that's be really quick to get sitting too loose. Let's give our green beans a little toss here. They're starting to caramelize a little bit. That's good. Give our potatoes a whip. There we go. I think there's plenty of seasoning in that. I think I'm using every spoon in my house. Plenty of seasoning. All right, let's get that off to the side. Give these beans another toss. They're looking good. No, they're only a 1/4 inch thick. So it's not like they take forever to cook. I like them al dente. Let's plate one of these guys up. Nice fluffy mash. I'm going to get a couple shots of the decal. That is that fatty part. Let's get a couple pieces of the lean part, the first cut. Grandma doesn't want a big plate. Give our beans a toss. One final toss on that. Get over in this gravy, huh? Right across the top there, and right down inside of that guy, huh? Use a corner, give it a push, and fill up that little well. The beans are done, caramelized, got a little bit of brown on them. And there we have it. Could have made some bread or biscuit. A biscuit with our brisket. All right, hope you like it.